Chelsea take on Crystal Palace at Stamford Bridge tomorrow in our season opener, but what do we have to do tactically in order to beat them? Well, we're going to talk all about that today, and it all starts with the lineup. So let's take a swift look at the Chelsea team that I would select for this game. I'll be putting our Chelsea side into our standard 4-3-3, and this will change in-game, and we'll talk about that in a moment. First up in goal will be Robert Sanchez. The Spaniard looks locked in as our number one for the season upcoming, so let's hope his recent good form continues throughout. The back four is going to be the exact same as our 4-1 drubbing of AC Milan in pre-season. I'm going to be putting captain Reece James in at right back once again. The centre-back partnership sees Tosin Adarabioyo retain his place, with Trevor Chalobah playing beside him in Levi Colwill's absence. Finally, at left back is the effervescent Marc Cucurella, who will be hoping to put that energy to good use once again. Moving into midfield, we'll be staying with our strongest midfield. Last season's player of the season, Moises Caicedo, starts in the deepest role as always, and ahead of him are of course the duo of Cole Palmer and Enzo Fernandez, who will be looking to add even more goals and assists this season. That just leaves the three attackers, and there'll be one change here. After a rather impressive couple of stints in pre-season, the young star Estival starts instead of Pedro Neto. On the opposite side, another breath of fresh air is on the wings as Jamie Gittins makes his competitive debut as well. Finally, up top will be the very informed Joao Pedro, who will be hoping to stay the starting striker despite Liam Delap's brace in the last game. Alright, so here we have the Chelsea team, and as ever we're going to kind of change how the lineup actually ends up playing out in game, because though it kind of starts as this 4-3-3 or the 4-2-3-1 sometimes, it never really ends up that way. With the changes to the back line with Levi Colwill's absence and Trevor Chalobah coming in here, it does change things up a little tiny bit, but not too much from what we normally see. We're going to obviously see Tosin kind of move into a central position here as the team kind of rotates into a 3 at the back or sometimes 2 at the back system. And we're going to do that by Cucurella moving into midfield. Now, we've seen different variants of this throughout Enzo Maresca's tenure at the club, but what we've been seeing recently and what we kind of saw in the AC Milan game, which is more similar to this lineup, is that Cucurella would come into midfield and then Chalobah would play as this left-sided centre-back, which isn't really in his wheelhouse too much because he is more of a right-sided player. But what this does allow is for Tosin to play in this central role where he can kind of use his good attributes like his good passing through the lines and, you know, defensive cover from aerial balls and things like that, to be able to kind of utilize those skills instead. James obviously would move over to be the third centre back in this system, and then we get the box in midfield. And this box in midfield is sometimes this flat box, and we'll probably see that for this game, the flat box with these two playing as a dual pivot in a way. Enzo and Palmer also playing kind of both as two advanced players. But what we have seen and what we saw in the AC Milan game is Palmer moving into a more central role and the team kind of rotating around and this box becoming a diamond. We've kind of spoken about this before. Obviously Palmer going into a 10 position and moving the team around. It's a bit weird to kind of do with this setup with these two here because with this rotation around, it puts Caicedo a bit too advanced and Cucurella as this back player, and that's not really what we really want. What we want to kind of see is Cucurella playing as this left-sided player without having to sacrifice Palmer playing in the central areas. So Caicedo moving back and Enzo either being here and these two being the other way around in the lineup for the diamond to then form, or what we kind of often see is Enzo dropping a bit deeper and allowing Cucurella to getting into these kind of advanced 10 positions as Palmer moves over to the right instead. Now what this allows us to do is with these two players in the central avenue, we don't really need to have anyone else there, and the wingers, Gittins and Estival, can stay very, very wide, hug the touchline, stretch the defence as it were, and then be able to create 1v1 opportunities. A lot of the time what we will actually see is whoever's in this left-hand role moving up to support the striker and kind of playing as a 2 up top with the other player moving into a central role. And we kind of get to see that same 2-2-4-2 formation that we've often seen from Chelsea recently kind of form as we get possession of the ball and, you know, are a bit more comfortable and we can kind of commit players a bit further forward. And what we'll end up seeing here is someone like Enzo going a bit higher to join Cole Palmer. Usually what this will be is actually Cucurella dropping into this role and Enzo kind of playing as the second striker, as it were. He loves to do this. Or of course, as I kind of spoke about in my breakdown of this system, which there'll be a little card in the top right that you can click on to see that. This can rotate, and obviously Palmer can go into this position, Pedro can go into this position, Enzo can drop back. You know, there's a lot of rotation between the players, but it stays kind of the same in terms of the structure. And one of the centre backs will actually move into midfield, and this would probably be James. So we can hold this kind of 2-2-4-2 shape, especially when we're in like spells of big possession and we're not under that much pressure and we don't have that much coming back at us. And we can play the 2-2-4-2 with these two obviously playing a bit wider in the midfield here, and then these two playing as the two. And what this allows us to do is obviously push our centre-backs really, really high up the pitch, and once the centre-backs are high up the pitch, we can really kind of squeeze teams and make it really difficult for them to play out. Or what we often see from teams that we play against is that this high press and this pressure will often end up with the centre-backs, if they ever get the ball, just having to line it through the centre to kind of get away from the pressure, like we kind of saw in the Liverpool-Bournemouth game yesterday. And when the ball does travel over to these areas, it's very easy for Sanchez to come out and claim and sweep up, and then we can recycle the ball and keep going on the offensive, and again, reapply that pressure and then keep getting those attacking opportunities off of that. If not, the ball just goes over and one of our centre-backs, likely Tosin, he's the best one in the air for us, will just header it back to, you know, someone in midfield, and then again, we'll go out wide, kind of try and create opportunities. Quick reminder that my FPL mini league is live. If you want to join that, it's free to do so. You just have to join the community Discord. The link will be down in the description where you can find out all about that. There's prizes to win and there's a lot of fun, so come along if you want. But for the most part, though we will see this 2-2-4-2 a lot throughout the game when we are in high spells of possession, for the most part we will stay in that kind of three at the back situation, with James being a bit, you know, a bit more reserved in this regard and kind of marshalling the fence on this right side. And though these two will kind of drop back and we'll see this more often, I think this is kind of more of the formation we do see, we will be moving back into that 2-2-4-2 throughout some periods of the game. Now, I think the interesting thing about this setup and this 3-4-2 as it were, or this, you know, 3-2-4-1 that we're currently playing here, is how well it matches up against Crystal Palace with their formation. Obviously, they play a very tight kind of 5 at the back, 3 at the back system as well. And the way that they play it is that they have a 5-2-2-1 in a way, where they have these 5 players across the back line, they have the 2 central players in midfield, they have 1 striker up top, the big striker target man, and then instead of having wide wingers out here on the touchline, they kind of play with 2 10s. These players will be a bit more inside, as normally Abera, Eze and Sarr on this kind of side. And what you can actually see immediately from this is how every single player in our system and every single player in their system has someone on them. Every single one is in a 1v1. And what that ends up making is this situation where our attackers get 1v1 opportunities out wide with their wide players. The central role for central players for us are obviously matched up by these central players regardless of who's on the ball at the time. Our 10s can also push up higher to then take on these players and make these 1v1s out here. And then of course in the opposite regard, they also have the same situation going against us, where obviously if they push their midfield up, they have these 1v1s against Caicedo and Cucurella, and of course there's the 3 up top versus our 3 at the back. Now, the reason why this is so interesting is that what this will force and what this will kind of set the pattern of play throughout this game is that the individual battles and the individual quality of the players is what's going to dictate who is successful and who's not. For example, in these wide areas, when we get the ball with someone like Esteval, if he's able to beat the left back, which would probably be Tyreek Mitchell, then we kind of get this scenario where we get the spare man. For example, again, just if Esteval, for example, gets past Mitchell here and he's out of the game, then we have this situation where we now have a 5v4 and we can get the spare man working depending on runs and things like that. So obviously, again, if Esteval can, you know, get into the box, there's a lot of danger here because obviously someone has to mark Pedro, which will probably be the centre back if he runs across. Someone obviously has to mark Palmer, so he has this. This centre back has this task of marking Palmer, and obviously they can't just leave Esteval out here on his own. And what will probably end up happening is that this player will come over the cover. Now Palmer's in space, the ball can go back to him, and then obviously we have this opportunity now for someone to get a shot off, or, you know, a pass to be played through, and we can get an opportunity there. We kind of see this thing happen in the Club World Cup for one of Palmer's goals, whereas that run across the box from our striker that takes out this centre back, he can come into this position and get strikes off, right? But obviously what this also means is that because we match up with them 1-to-1, they also match up with us 1-to-1, as I spoke about before. So during counter-attacks, because let's be honest, Chelsea are going to have the majority of the ball in this game, and Palace are a team that are very, very comfortable playing as a counter-attacking side. In fact, I think it suits them very, very well because of certain profiles they have in the team, like Mateta up top, for example, like Munoz on this right-hand side, who's rapid. It lends to them kind of, holding firm, sitting back, and then being able to play balls over the top for Mateta to kind of latch onto and then progress. And what this can kind of do is that if we don't win this individual battle, if the ball goes up to Mateta, which again, he's very, very good at holding up the ball, and that might happen quite often, then there's the scenario of if Tosin is out of the game, like we spoke about with the left back here, if he's out of the game because Mateta has got this, then kind of we have this problem of obviously Chalobah has to cover. If Chalobah covers, then out here on the right hand side, Sarr is now free to run into the box, and obviously he can get a strike off if the ball goes through to him. It's very, very individualistic, and it's very much a matter of whoever wins those individual duels at any given time is going to get an advantage, whether that's defensively or offensively, given the circumstances. Now, overall, you would probably assume that that would lend itself quite well to Chelsea, and because we are a team that has a lot better quality players overall, I would say we have the better individuals, though Palace are a very, very good team in their own right. We might see a situation where it all depends on which individuals on the day are actually performing. For example, if Sarr, who's been having very, very good games recently, if he is getting the better of Chalobah on this right-hand side, then they're obviously going to create more chances against stuff. They're going to obviously be much more of a threat. And if someone like, say, Enzo is getting bullied out of the game by this right centre-back, if he's being high-pressured, or, if Wharton is having a particularly good game in the midfield and is marshalling him. So this can work, it's either way, really. It's just, again, it's going to be on the day which players kind of, turn up. In terms of actually how Palace play, I think it's interesting to talk about their style, and I kind of touched on it briefly there with the long balls up to Mateta, but I think it's interesting to talk about how they play because, again, I think it lends very, very well into what we want to do, but also at the same time is actually a very good way of kind of beating us. Now, again, what they have in this system here is that they have the back three. It's usually Lacroix, Gay and Richards on this right hand side, but they stay very, very narrow in the box, and they let the two wing backs drop really deep as well and create this five when they're under pressure. Obviously they usually have Munoz on this right hand side, they usually have Mitchell on this left hand side. They can have Borna Sosa here, he's one of the new signings and he can obviously fit in here pretty well. They drop the two central midfielders down and they play this really horrible kind of situation, and again, with these two players out wide not really being wide players in a way, they kind of play more as inside forwards, they can actually tuck into midfield here, and that's what they often do, is they kind of tuck into midfield. Again, if they need to be very pragmatic, they can drop back to kind of double up on the wingers, and they can come out here, but they don't really always do this. They kind of stay a bit more central, and then obviously Mateta will stand basically wherever the centre-backs are at the time and just kind of try and disrupt things. Now, for us, obviously, if we move players up here, as we kind of progress up the pitch and playing a bit more on the ball, Chalobah obviously high up the pitch with Tosin and James over here. Now, he will kind of lurk here for the out ball if, for example, they win a header in the box or they get the ball for a cross and the keeper claims it. The long ball to Mateta to kind of fight for is what they then go for. Again, his hold-up plays really, really well. We saw this in the FA Cup final. We obviously saw it in the Community Shield as well. And his ability to hold up the ball and kind of create time for the other players to get involved is what makes him so special and why he's been so good. Obviously, he's been a great finisher as well, but it's his kind of link-up play that is what really cements him in this team, because he can hold up the ball, he can wait until, for example, Ezra on the left-hand side can get close to him, so he can then play 1-2s and spin in behind and kind of, again, he can fool that centre-back and make that space for himself, go forward and score, or... and what we often see is that he can hold up the ball enough for those wing backs who are very, very hard working and very, very kind of tasked with doing both jobs of defending and attacking. They can wait until they get high up the pitch and can join this wide area to, get in behind And this is where their danger really comes from, because all of their width comes from these two wing backs, obviously, because Sar and Eza try and play a bit closer to the striker. We'll try and see the ball go over, for example, like that, as we showed before. Mateta would knock it down to Eza, and already Munoz, for example, on this right hand side, would see him trying to do this, and he would be making his way up the pitch. He's now got this free run down the side. Eza can play him in, then they can get the ball, out into these wide areas where the delivery is usually good from Palace, and they can put it across the box for, again, someone like Mateta to get onto the end to, or one of the two runners off of the box, like the edge of the box. Eza always kind of ends up here. They can cut it back for him for get shots off as well. And we see that kind of pattern emerge with the fullbacks getting involved offensively, but then obviously dropping back as well. Now, this system is very, very strong. And again, they've beaten very, very good teams with this very recently. They've obviously beaten City in the FA Cup final last season. They also have beaten Liverpool in the Community Shield in recent times. Two very, very good teams that play very good possession-based football. And they really kind of held them off in a way and allowed them to kind of play to their own strengths. They will do the same thing against us because we're a team that likes to keep a lot of the ball. However, there is ways to beat this team. Obviously, they're not undefeatable, and we're going to kind of talk about how I would go around kind of beating them. I think first of all, we need to talk about why this system is strong, but also why it's kind of weak at the same time. Now, as I said before, when they defend and we are on the ball and we have our possession, they do drop into these two players into this central role. Obviously, they have the two defensive midfielders here as well, and then they have this really narrow five to kind of make this central area an absolute nightmare. So you can't swing the ball into the box really unless the delivery is absolutely pinpoint, or they will just clear it. They've got three decent aerial centre backs in the back line. Even though Gay is not the tallest, he's still decent at aerials when it goes into that front post area. And of course, they have these fullbacks or these wing backs out here as well. And what this does when they play like this and they play all stacked in the box is the gaps between the players, between the defenders, are really, really small, and it doesn't lend very much opportunity for you to get the ball through those lines to get a player into space, for example, to then put it across. It's really, really tight, and it's hard to play intricate football through that. And then obviously once they get the ball back, they can spring those counter attacks. What it does do, though, and this is the issue with this, is that it makes them so narrow, and they do sacrifice kind of width in this system to not only, again, pack the box with these five players, but in central areas specifically, again, because they don't play traditional kind of wingers out wide here, it's going to allow Chalabar and James to get on the ball in kind of advanced areas a bit more. It's going to allow Esteval and Gittins to get on the ball very, very easily out wide, not very challenged. And if they do get challenged by, for example, these kind of left and right sided players, then again, that opens up space in the middle for Caicedo and Cucurella to get to when these players go out to them. Instead, what we're going to kind of see is, again, those individual battles out wide. If the ball goes out to Esteval or Gittins, whoever's on this left-hand side cannot really just stay here. And it's part of the reason why I think, again, this system that we play really helps kind of beat these types of teams, because it will stretch out this defense. It's what it kind of has to do, because they can't just leave a player the quality of Gittins or Esteval, who are very, very good on the ball, to just have free space to run down the wing and try and put balls into the box. They won't allow you to do that. Again, if these players come out to challenge these players, what it does is it kind of, creates that extra space here for a runner like Palmer, for a runner like Joao Pedro into the channel. It allows that space to be there, or even just for Esteval to kind of run into after he gets past a player. And that's what you have to do against these sides. You have to really try and stretch that defense, make those gaps bigger. The other option for them is obviously mark Esteval with a central player, but again, similarly what we said about these two kind of central tens in a way, if the defensive midfielders come out here to try and stop them, or come out to try and double up and stop him, which will happen because he's very, very good, and same on the other side, if the ball then goes through to Palmer, again, now we've got extra space for Palmer to kind of be creative and get his head up, kind of pick the passes, or just take shots himself. And the reason why this is important mostly is that once we do get on the ball and we do go into that kind of 2-2-4-2 system, with obviously Cucurella going a bit higher, let's say James kind of moving into this midfield role, and Enzo going up into the striker position, is that we kind of occupy the same spaces but with an extra player up top. And now what you kind of see is that instead of it being one-to-one, as we spoke about before, it's now kind of there's one-to-ones majority of the time, but other players are kind of 1-to-2, or there's a little bit of a difference here. For example, again, Mateta is now up against two centre backs here rather than just being up against one of them. These two players are occupied by Caicedo and James in the centre here, and what this allows is that because we have the 4 and they only have the 3, we kind of outnumber them in these areas, and we're going to get a lot of possession in these situations. If, again, for example, if Mateta has come to press Tosin, he can easily pass this across to Chalobah, and now we've got extra space in the midfield to kind of play space too. Obviously, this ball down the centre is something that we love to do from central centre back, and that will usually be Tosin playing this. So let's actually, for example's sake, let's put it the other way around, and this will be someone like Palmer, just moving into space to get the ball, for example. And once this movement happens, we get the ball into these central areas again. Now these two players are kind of out of the game. We can then play forward and kind of move forward up the pitch. And the beauty of this is that if we are doing this and we're finding so much success and we're passing it around them in these areas, they will have to commit an extra player forward at times to kind of stop this from happening. And if they do that, that's going to drag someone out of position. Again, maybe this is, for example, one of the fullbacks, one of the wingbacks, getting a bit aggressive to try and stop, for example, James getting on the ball, because he will be coming in from this side. So he will be a player that can be marked by a wide player at times. And if he kind of follows this player, now we've got this extra space out wide for Esteval. And even if that kind of means someone drops into this position to cover for the fullback going forward, then again, that moves a player out from here. So now Palmer gets space. It's very much going to be a situation where if we can get one player in space on the ball at all times, we're going to do very, very well here. For Chelsea, it's all about making that commitment to play an extra player forward and get that advantage. Whether that's James moving into this midfield, whether that's Cucurella obviously moving up really, really high here and obviously pairing up with Enzo and Pedro, you have to make your own kind of space here against these teams that are very defensively solid, and again, especially teams that are very compact in the middle and leave the space out wide. I think that lends into our hands very well. Again, our wide players are kind of the core essence of why our team is good, and specifically getting these 1v1s out wide with our wide players is what kind of has always made our team so dangerous, because if we win these 1v1s and, for example, Gittins gets in behind here, this is where the danger spells, because they do have the 3 across the back, where they are occupied by Enzo and Pedro. And what we can kind of do is obviously, again, commit Palmer forward, so he's now being marked by someone else, and we can get Pedro unmarked. If Enzo's made this run into the box, for example, into the near post, we can get him unmarked to get on the ball and then score goals. Obviously, it goes without saying that playing balls into the air is probably not a good idea against this Palace team, because they are so defensively solid and they do have the 3 centre-backs here. They obviously are a very tall team in general with their kind of set plays and set pieces. They're going to be very dangerous from. We'll have to be kind of on the ball there. So low balls across the box, or getting crosses from these areas into the edge of the box is probably going to benefit us more, and I'd like to see us do that. But for the most part, our plan stays the same as it kind of always does. It's very much a situation where we need to get the ball to those wide players in space and bring out these wing backs, because the wing backs are what make this system work, right? If they are out of position, it really kind of falls apart, especially if, for example, we are playing on the counter or playing a bit more transitional, because Palace are a team that, despite playing a bit defensive when they're under a lot of pressure, in the first phase, when teams are building up, they will press, and obviously with that pressure comes the wing backs getting forward. If we are able to kind of pass away out of this pressure and then get the ball into those wide areas with the fullbacks committed, that's where the danger really spells as well. It's a matter of, again, getting those individuals, those moments of individual kind of brilliance able to kind of happen because of positioning play and because of being able to maneuver this Palace team out of position. We're not going to be able to just pass our way through Palace, because again, they're a very solid team. They're a very good team that kind of can sit in their shape. However, what we can do is drag players out of position, create those gaps, not kind of expect them to happen. And that also happens with quick passing, right? We're a very one-touch kind of passing possession-based side. With quick passing across the pitch and kind of moving it over as well. Again, as teams kind of have to shift over to follow the ball, that's where gaps can appear as well. So we'll have to do that very well. Apart from that, the majority of this game is going to be dictated by, again, how well we actually deal with Mateta and how well we deal with the fullbacks kind of marauding forward and are able to kind of, if we can stop the link between kind of this triangle here, right, where the ball goes into Mateta and you can easily get it to these two kind of advanced tens, as it were, and stop him from stalling the ball enough for these wingbacks to then get forward, and again they then create their width so they can play the ball into the box. That would limit what Palace are really capable of doing, because that's the way that they get out after being under a lot of pressure, and they've them kind of sitting back and absorbing that pressure. I think this game is going to be broken down by a few individual battles, meaning a lot. Obviously, whoever is on Palmer, if they can deal with Palmer, that really limits our attacking prowess. I think that this battle between Tosin or Chalabar at the time, who I think, let's be honest, Mateta will probably stay on Chalabar more if he can, because he's the weaker of the two aerially. But if we can kind of, whichever 1v1 this is, if we win this one, I think this is a real big kind of game changer for us to stop him from being so involved. Obviously, the midfield two against their midfield two is very important as well, because Sar's been in very good form. Enzo, we know how good he is. If we can stop those individuals from getting on the ball and, keep the ball kind of moving at them and not allowing them to get possession of the ball, and, being able to play it forward to those dangerous players like Mateta, like the wing backs, that will limit what they can do. And again, as I've highlighted before, the individual battles in the wide areas is going to be the main thing. We're going to see a pattern emerge in this game very quickly of Chelsea getting a lot of possession, playing it wide into these areas, and it's a matter of then, can the individual skill of our wingers get them into positions where they can create space for the other teammates? Can they force the fullbacks back in a way? Because that's the real kind of threat here, right? They don't have any width unless they have the fullbacks up the pitch. If you can keep these fullbacks, or these wingbacks rather, in their own box or in their own half, kind of having to back up, go backwards to defend, that will really limit what Palace can do. And again, it's an interesting thing that they have to do as these wing backs, because they are tasked of getting forward as well as getting back. It's very interesting to watch them when they do win the ball back, or when they do kind of defend well here. If a pass goes misplaced, for example, and the ball goes here, it's interesting to watch them and watch their reaction is as the ball is kind of going over to Mateta and he's able to kind of hold up the ball. They will start moving forward until they see that an opportunity arises for them to really get forward. And we can actually catch them out in these scenarios, that if Mateta, for example, wins the first knockdown, but then gets tackled by Caicedo, which can obviously happen, he's very good at doing this, and this player is kind of half committed up the pitch to start his run, again, one pass through the centre, for example, and this player is now out of position, we can then get the ball to the wide areas, get an opportunity that way. In truth, it's kind of hard to analyse this game, because it will, again, eventually just kind of boil down to which individuals can get the better of their opposite number, and which team can kind of create situations where they don't have those individual battles and they can kind of, get advantages in certain positions. For example, if the ball is out wide and we do have this 1v1 here, can we get Palmer out here to kind of support Esteval and make this a 2v1? Can we do that? And then obviously when the ball goes into him, can he get around the outside and be that spare man? Will this drag out this player to kind of, make this a 2v2? And if this does happen, can Joao Pedro drop into this position, get the ball, then to get turned and go forward? Can he, in that kind of regard, drag out a centre-back for Enzo to get some space, It's going to be a very, very much a game of cat and mouse in a way, where one team will be chasing, the other team will kind of be trying to make them chase them, and who can create the kind of little pockets of space to get that decisive kind of ball through and then get opportunities to score. I think defensively it's very important as well for us to get the balance right between obviously Kukurea going so high and kind of getting back to deal with those wide threats when they do come. Obviously, because they do not play to traditional wingers, let's say, there is more kind of merit to us sacrificing the width here and not having Kukurea out here, not having James out here, because we don't really need it, because they're going to be playing through the centre, right? And if we pack the centre with our players, for example, like James here, and obviously Kukurea, who kind of moves into this position as well, what this kind of allows us to do is keep the ball in central areas and not make them able to use this space that we vacate out wide for their own attacks. There's so much space out here for them to attack into if they can get it there. It is the one kind of weakness we've seen from this Chelsea side, is that when we do play this way and we do invert our kind of fullbacks, whether that's both of them inverting in this 2-2-4-2 or just one inverting, like for example with Kukurea as James plays in the 3, what this still does, even though it is now a 3 and this is a little bit easier to deal with wide threats than the other system kind of did, what this unfortunately ends up happening in this system is it kind of allows this space where the player is inverted to be exploited, especially in transition. If Kukurea is here and they kind of, you know, he's trying to get back to move out wide whilst, for example, Munoz has gone out here on the ball. Again, this is very dangerous. Like, the Palace have got very good deliverers of the ball with Munoz, with Tyreek Mitchell on this left-hand side as well. And if they can get into this space that we vacate because we've made that movement inside, again, they could very well score against us. We saw the same thing happen against City. We saw the same thing happen against Liverpool. They're very, very good at getting the ball through the centre, then out wide to those wide kind of wing-backs, then getting the ball into the box and scoring from those opportunities. And I think part of the reason why this worked so well against Liverpool and Man City is because, again, they are both teams that like to commit their fullbacks either into midfield with an inversion in City's case, or high up the pitch in wide areas, like in Liverpool's case with Jeremy Frimpong and Kerkez. And that's how they can kind of, you know, that's how they can create their opportunities, because they know that they're going to commit those players forward. If they can hold on long enough and not concede goals, and then get the ball into those areas that are vacated by the fullbacks and exploit that, that's where their danger comes from. So I think it's very important for us to get the balance right between committing these players forward and being able to get the extra man in midfield and kind of, you know, outnumber our opponents centrally, and not getting overloaded out wide and kind of exposed because we haven't got the players out there anymore. When we do turn over the ball after a kind of an attacking phase of play, I think it's really important for us to get back quickly. And we've seen Kukurea do this quite often. And obviously Caicedo is another player that when he's in the central role, he can kind of cover for this. If Kukurea has gone really, really high, because we often see him getting into the box and being almost like a third 8 at times, if he can kind of get back and help out as well, that'll be very important for us. It works both ways, and I think that's why this game is so interesting to me, is that both of the setups of the teams both have that same issue, where if, for example, they've committed both their wing backs up the pitch, and they've committed, you know, some attackers kind of forward, and they've moved these kind of deeper players forward, again, then we get the same scenario where if they lose the ball, they've vacated the space out wide because they don't have the fullbacks there. They've vacated the space in the middle because they've pushed their midfielders forward as they've tried to counter-attack. We can then become a little bit more transitional, pass our way through like we often do, and get opportunities on that regard. Pretty much anything I've said in terms of the way that they perform is similar to us. But the only kind of real difference is that the players that they have out wide are both defensively responsible and offensively responsible, whereas ours are just a bit kind of tasked with being offensive, and they can keep the width and, you know, focus on attacking, but obviously they will have to get back at times as well. But they can, majority of the time, focus on attacking, and for the majority of the time, Palaces will focus on defending, but obviously can get up as well. Again, I think that this system, both of these systems, the way they line up against each other is quite interesting, because it is so individualistic in the fact that it will genuinely boil down to which individual player gets the better of his man at any given time. I suppose we'll just have to wait and see which of these two sets of players can do that when we play tomorrow at Stamford Bridge. As always, I will be doing a live watch along for this game, so if you want to come and react to the game with me, I'll be streaming on this channel as ever. Make sure you leave the video a like, it really helps out the channel and me, and don't forget to subscribe for more tactical content like this. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever, and remember, football could be as simple as black and white.
Something right, I'm drowning in the ocean. I'm still alive, but I feel the fall in motion. I lost the fight and now I'm finally floating, but I still try to hide my emotion. Who am I in pieces I've been broken?